Hello gamers from around the world, this is Archimedes, the video game enthusiast from Germany, with a thought-provoking video on the acquisitions of development studios that we see in the gaming industry at the moment. Last week, Borderlands developer Gearbox Software got acquired for $1.3 billion by the Embracer Group, the parent company of the publishing and development studios THQ Nordic, Saber Interactive, Koch Media and Deep Silver. Now we're getting these kind of acquisition news on a very regular basis lately. Xbox started the whole acquisition discussion back in 2018 when they started to increase their first-party portfolio from 5 studios to now 23 studios, and the biggest acquisition was definitely them buying out ZeniMax/Bethesda. Sony also made the headlines with the acquisition of Insomniac in 2019, and just last week Sony reported their record-breaking revenue of $25.6 billion and the net income of $3.5 billion, which is up a 20% on a year-to-year basis. And when they were asked what they want to do with all that money, they said they want to invest in the entertainment space, and with that they highly suggested that they are looking for more acquisitions. And EA also made the headlines with the acquisition of the Dirt 5 developer Codemasters in December 2020. So these were just a few examples of the bigger acquisitions we got over the last months in the gaming industry. Now I want to use today's video to discuss this shopping spree from bigger publishers with you, because there's a lot to it, and it seems that these acquisitions will reshape the gaming landscape as we know it today. And so I want to discuss with you, are we in the middle of an acquisition war in between the major players in the gaming industry? What does it mean for smaller and independent developers? And most importantly, what are the pros and cons for us gamers with these acquisitions? But before we go through all of that, I want to ask you for a favor. I put a lot of work into my videos and I try to grow my channel, so if you think you are enjoying what you see, then please consider to hit the like and subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to not miss out on future content. All of this does not cost you anything and is completely anonymous, by the way, but it helps me more than you think. And if you know someone who would enjoy this kind of content, please feel free to share it out. I really do appreciate all the support. Okay, and now let's talk about the acquisition landscape of development studios in the gaming industry. I wanted to do this video for a while now, because especially when we talk about Xbox and the Xbox studios, the talk about possible studio acquisitions always comes up. And I get that fans, including myself, sometimes get excited when thinking about Microsoft buying out this or that studio. But besides seeing the Xbox brand grow, there's a lot more to these acquisitions. Last week, Stadia, the game streaming service from Google, announced that they will close all their first-party studios that they tried to build up, and they will solely rely on second and third-party support for their service. And this made me think, what if they would have bought one of my beloved developers and then, after a lackluster try of 1 year or so, they'd simply shut them down? You see, when we talk about acquisitions, they do not just bring opportunities to grow a certain brand. The gaming landscape becomes more and more complicated because there are new and more and bigger players in the industry now. Google is just one of them. Then we have Amazon with their streaming service Luna. We have Nvidia with their own streaming service. We have the classics like Xbox, PlayStation and Nintendo. Although admittedly Nintendo seems not to partake in this acquisition race. But then we also have relatively unknown players like Tencent, a Chinese company that is really stretching out in the gaming space. For instance, they own League of Legends, arguably one of the biggest games out there, or they own 48% of Epic Games, and with that a big chunk of games like Fortnite. And on top of that we have of course bigger publishers like EA, Activision Blizzard and the aforementioned Embracer Group, just to name a few. Now let's start with looking at the classic players in the gaming space. Sony with their PlayStation brand and Microsoft with their Xbox brand. Like I said earlier, Microsoft has acquired over the last 2 years 18 different studios, and now they own in total 23 development studios that are apparently working on around about 30 to 35 different games at the moment, making them one of the biggest publishers out there. And Microsoft has said openly that they are not done with their shopping spree, and I have seen a lot of discussions out there around the question, which might be the next big acquisition for Microsoft. There is the rumor out there that they are working on a Bethesda level acquisition, meaning probably another big publisher like an Ubisoft, Square Enix or maybe even Valve, which by the way would be my guess if that rumor is true. However, whether it's another big publisher that Microsoft wants to acquire or multiple smaller or mid-sized development studios they are looking to grow, their first-party portfolio, and obviously the main reason for them to do so is to bring a continuous stream of games into their subscription service Game Pass. And it only makes sense because if you have a subscription service like Netflix, you have to have a continuous reason for gamers to stay in the subscription. And the only way you can do that is to have really many studios that support Game Pass with exclusive content. And then we have Sony. They have a huge install base and fan base, and they have just last week teased that they are looking into more acquisitions. And of course that makes sense for them because they have a couple of studios that they are working with very closely, like Bluepoint or Housemarque. And of course they see the potential for Microsoft of them becoming the biggest publisher outside of the mobile gaming space. So of course they want to continue to do what they do best, and that is creating exclusive content for their ecosystem. So far so good. Microsoft and Sony are fighting for our wallets by developing AAA blockbuster games with great technology, big fundings and a lot of development time. That's exactly what we want, healthy competition in between the two platform holders. I leave Nintendo out of this discussion because they somehow play in their own league. They were also super successful in the last fiscal year, having a record-selling console with the Nintendo Switch and making some insanely healthy numbers. However, they seem not to compete in the console/PC gaming space, but more having their own business, which I highly applaud, by the way. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have new players in there, and Microsoft have said that they do not just see Sony as their main competitor, but Google and Amazon with their streaming services, because they see that the classic console space has only so much potential to grow. But outside of the console space, for instance in the mobile or tablet space or the smart TV space or even the smart refrigerator space, basically all the devices that have a screen, there's a lot of potential for growth of the gaming industry. And that's kind of the area where Stadia and Luna come in. Now obviously Google was hoping with Stadia for a quick return of their investment, because otherwise they wouldn't have shut down their first party studios so quickly. But that's not what the gaming industry is. The gaming industry is a very lucrative business, but it's a long-term business. If you want to establish a name in the gaming industry, you have to show gamers that their investment is taken care of. If you have a gaming service like Stadia where you invest like 60 or 70 bucks for a new game and 1 year later they just shut the service down, you are screwed. And that's why a lot of gamers are so hesitant to invest in those new brands, because all these new companies have yet to prove that they are in for the long run and not just in the gaming industry to make a quick buck. However, companies like Amazon or Google do have a lot of money, and they might just simply buy out one of our favorite developers to boost their service, and if they don't see a quick growth or return of investment, they might just do what happened last week with Stadia and shut the studios down. So that's definitely one of the dangers in those acquisition talks, that a studio that is beloved by most might just come under the train with one of those companies. And of course, players like Tencent do not want to establish their own gaming platform. They are more like investors. They will invest their money into a game developer and they want to see a good return of their investment. Now there's definitely the potential that with investors and not passionate gamers running the studios, that we might be looking to some shady business practices coming in. But besides these dangers of new players in the gaming industry buying up studios, closing them down or introducing consumer unfriendly business moves, there's also the possibility that the chemistry within a studio just does not fit to their new parent company. We have seen such things happening. One of the most prominent examples would be BioWare. That studio just didn't work within EA, and that is something we also should keep in mind when we are cheering for our favorite brands to acquire new and more studios. The gaming landscape itself lives and breathes with diversity and creativity, and we have seen some fantastic independent, smaller or bigger studios and publishers delivering us great experiences. Now we don't know where these acquisition sprees will end, but if Sony, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Tencent or whoever buys out more and more studios, the gaming landscape will mainly consist of a couple of big names. And now we of course have to ask ourselves, what is healthy for us gamers and the game developers? I get of course that a lot of smaller studios have to deal with the issues of small funding, constant fear of not being able to pay the salaries and bills and so on, and that a financial stable parent company can really take off a lot of the burdens that smaller to mid-sized studios have to go through. So in the end, it's not just about the dangers of an acquisition, it's also about opportunities. Talented developers finally having the funding and resources to build the games that they envision and not just build the games that they can afford to build. And I do hope that these acquisitions sprees from the bigger publishers will allow exactly for that to happen, that smaller to mid-sized tier studios get the chance to build the games they want to. And with that thought, I want to come to an end of this video. I hope I was able to deliver the pros and cons of those acquisitions that we will see over the next months and years more and more often. As long as none of our beloved studios gets shut down just because of a bad investment of a certain company, I'm really looking forward to see how the gaming landscape will look in a couple of years and if we will have the same diversity of publishers that we have today. But there's definitely the potential here for a lot of developers to build through an acquisition more mature and sophisticated games, and that's what I'm looking forward to in this newly started generation. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please do not forget to hit the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell, and consider sharing this out to other gamers. I would greatly appreciate it. And let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts on all these acquisitions? Are you excited about the new players in the gaming industry? And besides here on YouTube, you can also hit me up on Twitter, where I share a lot of opinions and gaming discussions. But for now, thank you very much for watching, I see you the next time, and game on!